My name is Mara Ellison. I'm 27 years old, and until 3 days before my parents' 30th wedding anniversary, I still believed that if I stayed quiet long enough, my place in the family might return on its own. It didn't. The message came on a Wednesday afternoon.
No emojis.
No punctuation, softened by affection. Just clean sentences, arranged like a decision already approved. Don't come to the anniversary dinner. It's a private event at the marina. The guest list is very specific. It would be better if you weren't there. I stared at the screen longer than I should have. Not because I didn't understand it, but because some small, stubborn part of me still hoped there might be a follow-up. A "will explain later," or even a weak excuse dressed up as concern. Nothing came. I set my phone face down on the desk and went back to work, pretending my hands weren't shaking. I grew up in a house where silence meant agreement and appearance mattered more than intention. From the outside, the Ellison family looked perfect.
Coastal money.
Clean reputation. Summer photos on boats that didn't belong to us but might as well have. My parents built their lives around a luxury brokerage firm that specialized in high-end maritime assets. Yachts, charters, discreet private sales. The kinds of deals where nothing was written down until the handshake was already understood. They didn't talk about the company as something they owned. They talked about it like something they served. The firm came first, then the reputation, then the family, so long as the family didn't complicate the first two. I learned that early. My older sister, Elena, never had to learn it. She fit. 6 years older, she moved through rooms like she'd memorized the choreography. She smiled at the right moment. She laughed without showing too much. She remembered names, faces, anniversaries. When she spoke, people leaned in. My parents didn't need to explain expectations to her. She absorbed them through the air. At 16, she accompanied them to international shows. At 22, she was already handling client calls. At 25, she ran meetings while my parents watched from the side, proud and relaxed. They introduced her as the future of the firm. When they introduced me, it was usually with a qualifier. "This is Mara," my mother would say. "She's very bright, very technical." As if intelligence required translation. I was the quiet one. The kid who took apart electronics to see how they worked. The teenager who preferred libraries to parties. The college student who disappeared into labs while everyone else networked. When I got into a top engineering program, my parents smiled for the announcement photo. Then my mother told a friend it was a good phase. I didn't understand what she meant at the time. I learned later. They didn't attend my graduation. There was a yacht launch that weekend. A European client was flying in. Elena was presenting. "Networking is everything," my mother told me over the phone. "You understand, right?"
I said yes.
Understanding was easier than arguing. Family dinners slowly stopped including me. Conversations shifted before I finished speaking. Invitations arrived late or not at all. Holiday cards featured Elena on polished decks with clients I recognized from magazines. I appeared once, years ago, standing slightly apart, smiling like I was borrowing someone else's life. Eventually, I stopped showing up.
No one asked why.
One summer, I offered to rebuild the firm's website. It was slow, outdated, and embarrassing for a company that sold 8-figure assets. I rebuilt it in a week. Faster load times. Clean layout. Searchable listings. I showed my mother the prototype. She looked at it for less than 10 seconds. "We have people for that," she said. "Don't waste your time." Elena laughed and added, "We need you at events, not hiding behind a screen." I nodded. Then I stopped offering. In our family, value wasn't about effort. It was about alignment. If what you did made the firm look stronger, you mattered. If it didn't, even if it was impressive, you were an inconvenience. Once I understood that, things made more sense. So, I built something that didn't need their approval. I was 24, sleeping on a friend's couch near campus, working 2 part-time jobs to stay afloat. Every night, after everyone else slept, I opened my laptop and worked. I started with a question no one in my family ever asked out loud. Why were valuations still based on instinct? Luxury maritime assets were treated like art, subjective, opaque, controlled by insiders. Deals depended on who you knew, not what you could prove. I thought that was inefficient. I thought it was fragile. So I started building a system that didn't care who you were. A valuation engine that could analyze images, maintenance records, market trends, and historical sales data, then generate a price range more accurate than any human broker. It wasn't fast at first. It broke constantly. I rewrote entire sections weekly. But it learned.
So did I.
I called it Anchorline. No one else knew it existed. People think secrecy is fear. It isn't. It's instinct. I didn't tell my family because I already knew what would happen. They wouldn't see it as mine. They would see it as useful. And usefulness, in our family, meant ownership. So I documented everything. Timestamps. Version histories. Independent verification. I didn't think of it as protection. I thought of it as respect for myself. 2 years later, my mother called. Not to ask how I was. To tell me the firm was under pressure. Investors wanted innovation. Competitors were flashy. Elena was carrying too much. You understand technology, she said. You could help us explain things. She didn't ask what I was building. She assumed. I hesitated. Then I agreed to talk.
Just talk.
The office smelled the same.
Salt.
Varnish. Polished wood. Elena greeted me with a hug that felt rehearsed. We sat in the conference room, overlooking the docks. White hulls bobbing in the sun like status symbols waiting to be claimed. She opened a leather notebook. Explain this stuff to me, she said. Simple. I kept it high level. Concepts only. No code. No systems. She wrote quickly. Too quickly. When I left, something fell off. I ignored it. 2 weeks later, I sat in the back of a pitch meeting. Elena stood at the front. The slides looked familiar. My language. My frameworks. Cleaned up.
Polished.
When an investor asked who developed it, she smiled. My sister's been helping. Helping. After the meeting, she handed me a document. Just an NDA, she said. Standard. I signed. I still believed the word family meant protection. 3 days before the anniversary gala, the text arrived. And suddenly everything made sense. They didn't want me there because I no longer fit the story. And stories in my family mattered more than truth. I didn't realize I was being studied until after I was already being copied. At first, it felt like interest. The good kind. The kind families are supposed to show when they finally notice something you've built. Elena started calling more often. Not to ask how I was, but to pick my brain. How does the system think about depreciation? What signals matter most in visual analysis? Why do certain assets hold value longer than others? I answered carefully. Concepts only. Frameworks. Ideas you could find in a white paper if you knew what to search for. I never opened my codebase. Never showed architecture. Never shared training data. I told myself that was enough distance. I was wrong. At first, Elena sounded impressed. Then she sounded confident. Then she sounded entitled. She stopped asking questions and started making statements. We can integrate this into the firm's workflow. Investors love this angle. This gives us leverage.
Us.
Every time she said it, something tightened in my chest. Because she wasn't talking about collaboration. She was talking about possession. The NDA I'd signed was broad, but not illegal. It covered proprietary firm information, internal strategies, client data. It did not cover independent intellectual property developed outside the firm. I knew that. Elena knew that too. But language isn't just about legality. It's about intimidation. She started referencing it casually. You're covered under the agreement. This stays in the family. We don't want leaks. Each mention made the line blur just enough to confuse intention. The requests came faster. Can you run projections on this listing? Can you show how the system flags overpricing? Can you summarize how it handles cross-market comps? I provided outputs. Numbers.
Graphs.
Sanitized results. Never the engine. Elena used them everywhere. At conferences. In pitch decks. In private investor meetings. She spoke with authority now. Confidence sharpened by borrowed insight. And people believed her. At a regional expo, Elena delivered a keynote. I watched from the back. She described a valuation process using my exact phrasing. Not paraphrased. Not adapted. Copied. The crowd applauded. She thanked the team. I wasn't mentioned. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself I wasn't doing this for recognition. But something fundamental shifted that day. Because recognition wasn't the point. Control was. It arrived late on a Thursday night. Subject. Integration timeline.
Elena outline da plan.
They wanted to embed the valuation system into firm operations. Roll it out as an internal tool. Eventually, client-facing. She wrote like it was already decided. I replied carefully. This system is not firm property. I've only shared conceptual overviews and anonymized outputs. Her response came fast. We can discuss ownership later. Right now, the firm needs this.
Needs.
Another word that disguises entitlement as urgency. The next call came from my mother. Her tone was smooth.
Strategic.
We're under pressure, she said. And you're in a position to help. I said I already had.
She paused.
Not like this. She explained that investors expected innovation, that Elena was carrying too much, that the firm's future depended on staying competitive. You don't want to be the reason we fall behind, she said. It wasn't a request. It was a warning. Elena called the following evening.
No greeting.
We need the full system. I told her no. She laughed. You consulted for us. You used our time. That makes it ours. I reminded her the system existed before any consultation. She said, that's not how this will look. And just like that, the truth surfaced. This wasn't about contribution. It was about narrative. She came to my apartment 2 days later. Used a key my mother still had. She sat on my couch like it belonged to her. We can do this the easy way, she said. Or we can involve lawyers. She listed the accusations calmly. Conflict of interest. Breach of duty.
NDA violations.
Words chosen to scare, not to stand. I didn't argue. I pressed record. She talked for 20 minutes. Enough. She didn't know Connecticut allowed one-party consent. She didn't know I'd documented everything. She didn't know I'd already spoken to counsel, quietly. She thought I was still the quiet one, the accommodating one, the one who would fold to keep peace. After that, the silence was deliberate. Emails stopped including me. Family group chats vanished. Social media posts erased my existence. When my mother finally called, she said the words that explained everything. You make people uncomfortable. She framed it as concern. It's better if you stay away for now. I agreed. And I stopped responding. I focused on Anchorline. I partnered with 2 mid-sized agencies. Quiet ones. Practical ones. They gave me real data. The system improved fast. Accuracy tightened. Words spread, not loudly but effectively. By fall, I had a letter of intent from a national group. The valuation attached made me stare at the screen for a long time. Not because of the number. Because of what it meant. I no longer needed them. I gathered everything. Documentation. Emails. Timelines. I contacted a journalist known for precise reporting. I didn't embellish. I didn't dramatize. I just showed the truth. And I waited. The anniversary gala approached. I wasn't invited. That was fine. Because I had already decided something. I would not protect a story that erased me. And I would not stay silent to preserve a legacy that never made space for me. There's a moment when silence stops being absence and becomes strategy. I felt it settle after Elena left my apartment. The door closed softly behind her.
No slam.
No drama. Just the quiet click of certainty. She believed she'd won. I stood in the kitchen for a long time after, phone still recording in my pocket, listening to the echo of her voice replay in my head. We'll have to take legal action. You signed the agreement. Don't make this difficult. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I sat down, opened my laptop, and started organizing. Power assumes silence. It assumes you'll be overwhelmed, that you'll second-guess yourself. That fear will make you compliant. Elena had spent her life in rooms where intimidation worked because no one wanted to break the illusion.
She thought I was the same.
She was wrong. I listened to the audio 3 times. Once to make sure it was clear. Once to catalog the threats. Once to understand the shift in her tone. She started calm, confident, almost bored. By the end, her voice sharpened. You're choosing your side project over the family. You're being selfish. You don't understand the damage you're causing. It wasn't a negotiation. It was coercion. When I stepped back, everything aligned. The NDA pressure. The language in her emails. The way my contributions were reframed as help. They hadn't been confused. They'd been preparing. Slowly conditioning the narrative so that when they took it, it would look justified. I wasn't a collaborator. I was an obstacle. The erasure began quietly. I noticed it in small ways. Meeting invites stopped arriving. Email threads closed without me. A family calendar I'd been included on vanished.
No confrontación. No explanación.
Just deletion. When my mother finally called, her voice was controlled in that familiar way, the tone she used with clients when something was already decided. I think some space would be healthy, she said.
I didn't respond.
You've been tense, she continued. Clients can feel that. It changes the atmosphere. I asked her what that meant. She paused. You make people uncomfortable. There it was. The sentence that wrapped exclusion in politeness. It's better if you stay away for now, she added. For everyone's sake. I thanked her for telling me. And then I hung up. Days passed. No messages from Elena. No check-ins from my parents. I existed in a strange calm. Like the eye of a storm everyone else was pretending hadn't formed. I worked. I refined Anchorline. I onboarded another agency. The system performed better than projected. Accuracy tightened. Confidence grew. Not in the market, but in myself. For the first time, I stopped wondering if I was wrong. I contacted a former professor. She verified my timelines. I reached out to an IP attorney. Quietly. I backed up everything twice. Then I contacted a journalist. Not a gossip columnist. A documentarian. I sent one email. I have a story involving family business, IP misappropriation, and a clear paper trail. No drama. Just facts. She replied within an hour. 2 days before the gala, Elena texted. Last chance. This doesn't have to get ugly. I didn't reply. Because ugliness only exists when you're afraid to show what happened. I wasn't anymore. The article was scheduled. I was asked if I wanted to delay. I said no. I didn't owe them more time. I stayed home.
No dress. No makeup.
No performance. I watched the marina lights flicker outside my window. At exactly 8:17 p.m., the article went live. I didn't see the fallout immediately. I heard it. My phone vibrated endlessly on the table.
Calls.
Messages. Unknown numbers. I turned it face down. And waited. Elena called. I let it ring. Then my mother. Then numbers I didn't recognize. I answered none of them. Because once the truth is out, conversation becomes negotiation. And I was done negotiating. It laid out the facts. The development timeline. The documentation. The comparison slides. The NDA language.
No adjectives. No accusations.
Just alignment. It didn't need outrage. It had clarity. Within minutes, industry chatter exploded. People recognized the frameworks. They remembered the presentations. They connected dots Elena thought were invisible. The firm's phone lines lit up. I watched from a distance. Elena called again. Her voice was different now.
Raw.
You destroyed everything, she said. I listened. She threatened lawsuits. I said nothing. Then I hung up. Trade publications followed up.
Client pool listing.
The board called emergency meetings. By noon, Elena was placed on administrative leave. The statement was brief. An investigation is underway. That was the moment the illusion cracked. My father didn't call that day. Or the next. He waited weeks. They hadn't excluded me because I was wrong. They excluded me because I couldn't be controlled. And once control fails, power panics. The investigation moved faster than I expected. That was the first sign the firm knew it couldn't control the outcome. When organizations believe they're innocent, they stall. They delay. They negotiate optics. They issue vague statements and buy time. When they know something will surface, they rush. White Line Brokerage released a public notice within 48 hours of the article going live. A third-party review has been initiated. We take all allegations seriously. Leadership changes may occur pending findings. The language was careful, neutral, designed to calm investors without admitting fault. It didn't work. I still wasn't answering calls. Journalists left voicemails. Old classmates sent texts. People I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly remembered my name. I listened to a few messages out of curiosity. Most were variations of the same thing. We always wondered where those ideas came from. This explains a lot. I'm sorry your family did this to you. I deleted them all. Validation didn't matter. Resolution did. I learned later how fast things unraveled. The board convened an emergency session the morning after the article spread through trade publications. Senior partners demanded timelines. Legal teams requested internal emails. Assistants were instructed not to delete anything. That instruction came too late, but not late enough. Copies existed. They always do. The decisive evidence wasn't my documentation. It was Elena's. A former client, someone she'd pitched aggressively, had kept a copy of her presentation. Not because he trusted her, but because he didn't. When investigators placed that deck next to my early development notes, the overlap was impossible to ignore. Same structure, same phrasing, same conceptual flow, different signatures. Elena didn't call me during the investigation. Not once. Her lawyers did. I didn't respond. Everything they needed was already public. My parents issued no apology.
No acknowledgement.
Only silence. And that silence said more than any denial could have. Elena resigned 3 weeks into the investigation. The announcement was brief. Elena White Line has stepped down to pursue other opportunities. No mention of misconduct.
No admission.
Just an exit designed to stop further bleeding. It didn't. The industry is small. Reputation travels faster than facts. And once doubt enters, it doesn't leave quietly. Listings were pulled.
Client pose de négociation.
Investors delayed commitments. Within a month, the firm's projected annual revenue dropped by nearly a third. Competitors circled. It came late one night. I almost didn't answer. But I did. Marhi said. His voice sounded different. Older. Smaller. I need to say something. I waited. I knew, he said. Not everything. But enough. The words settled heavily. I told myself it would stabilize. That once the quarter closed, we'd figure it out.
He paused.
I was wrong. He didn't ask me to come back. He didn't ask me to help. He asked if I hated them. I said no. But I didn't forgive them either. Those are different things. After that call, I blocked every number. My mother tried once, through an unknown line. Elena sent an email that never reached me. I didn't read it. I wasn't angry. I was finished. White Line survived. But it shrank. New management. New branding.
Fewer clients.
The legacy my parents had protected so fiercely cracked under its own weight. Not because I exposed it. Because it was built on borrowed ground. Relief surprised me. Not triumph. Not revenge. Relief. The kind that comes when you stop carrying something that was never yours. I turned fully to Anchorline. The letter of intent became a signed partnership. Then another. Then another. For the first time, growth felt clean.
No secrets. No leverie.
No fear. Months later, a mediator reached out. There's interest in reconciliation, he said. I declined. Some doors don't close by accident. Family doesn't guarantee safety. Legacy doesn't guarantee integrity. And silence only benefits the people already holding power. There was no public celebration. No press conference. No victory speech. Just momentum.
and peace.
1 year later, I woke up in an apartment that was entirely mine. Not borrowed. Not temporary. Not quietly waiting for permission to exist. Morning light came through wide windows and landed on bare walls I hadn't bothered to decorate yet. No framed photos. No family portraits. No reminders of where I came from.
Just space.
And for the first time, that felt like wealth. People think success announces itself loudly. It doesn't. It shows up as fewer doubts. I noticed it in small moments, when I stopped explaining myself during meetings, when decisions came easily, when I trusted my own judgment without checking it against an imagined voice from my past. Anchorline had grown faster than I expected. The initial partnership rolled out nationwide. Agencies from different coasts on board within weeks. Valuations that once took days now took minutes. Accuracy tightened. Confidence followed. Revenue crossed 8 figures in the first quarter. I didn't celebrate. I hired carefully. The office wasn't glamorous. Exposed brick. Whiteboards on every wall. No corner offices. We didn't talk about culture in rehearsed language. We built it through behavior.
No ampad labor. No blurred boundaries.
No family favors disguised as loyalty. Everyone signed clear agreements. Everyone owned their work. I learned that trust doesn't come from closeness. It comes from clarity. No calls came through from my parents. I'd blocked every number. Filtered every email. Once, a handwritten letter arrived. No return address. I didn't open it. Closure isn't something other people give you. It's something you stop asking for. Neither did it forgive. Elena's name stopped circulating quietly at first. Then completely. She tried consulting. Small firms. Short contracts. Nothing stuck. Reputation doesn't shatter all at once. It erodes. White line brokerage didn't collapse dramatically. It thinned.
Client drifted.
Partners retired early. Outside management stepped in. The legacy survived, but stripped of its certainty. And without certainty, power is just habit. One evening, an unknown number appeared on my phone. I let it ring. A voicemail followed. Mara, it's your father. Just me. I'd like to talk. I deleted it. Not out of anger. Out of alignment. The email came in February. A Women in Tech Summit. 1,200 attendees. Keynote speaker. I almost said no. Old instincts die slowly. Then I accepted. Backstage, my hands shook. Not from fear, but from memory. Years of being told I didn't fit. That I made rooms uncomfortable. That I should soften myself to belong. The announcer said my name. Applause rose. I walked out into light. I didn't talk about my family at first. I talked about systems. About documentation. About boundaries that protect creativity. Then I told the truth. Not with bitterness. With precision. I was taught that legacy matters more than people. I said. That silence keeps peace. It doesn't. When your work is taken, speak. When your boundaries are tested, document. When you're erased, don't beg to be remembered. Build somewhere you can't be edited out. The room stood. I didn't look for faces. I didn't need to. They flooded in. My brother took credit for my code. My parents said my startup was a hobby. I was told not to cause problems. I responded to as many as I could. With the same advice, every time. Write it down. Protect it early. Never trade ownership for approval. It didn't give me revenge. It gave me distance. Enough to see the truth clearly. I wasn't excluded because I failed. I was excluded because I couldn't be controlled. Some families confuse loyalty with obedience. Some legacies demand silence. You don't owe either your life's work. Walking away isn't weakness. It's authorship. On holidays, my apartment fills with people who chose me. Engineers. Friends. Mentors.
No hierarchy.
No performance. Just laughter, food, and space. I don't miss the yacht. I don't miss the gala. I don't miss being invited to rooms where I had to shrink to stay. A year ago, I watched my family celebrate without me. Tonight, my team is here. The windows are open. The city hums below. And nothing I've built can be taken without my consent. That's not revenge. That's freedom.